Ever been just floored by how differently people see the world? I mean, what makes perfect sense to you can be a complete mystery to someone else.
Absolutely. It happens all the time.
So today, we're diving into understanding those differences. We're looking at something called harvest field research.
Right. Think of it as a powerful lens for understanding any group of people.
And right at the heart of it is this vital idea of their worldview.
Exactly. Our sources today really hammer this home if you want to truly connect, especially when sharing deep beliefs. You've got to look way beyond just, the basic demographics.
So more than just numbers and stats.
Much more. We're talking about grasping the fundamental way they interpret everything, their worldview. It's shaped by their history, their culture, their core assumptions.
And understanding that lens is key, yeah, to avoid communication breakdowns and, well, cultural missteps.
Totally key. You get it wrong, and you risk real problems.
Okay, so our goal in this deep dive, then, is to pull out the essential insights from this material. How do we really understand and engage effectively by focusing on that worldview?
We're going deep, not just skimming the surface, but getting into what truly shapes a group's identity and actions.
Right. And this deeper understanding starts with this harvest field research, as you called it.
Yes. Our sources explain it as a really comprehensive effort. Gathering information about a people group demographic, sure, that's part of it.
But not the main part.
No, more importantly, their worldview. This kind of detailed profiling, it's incredibly valuable for anyone, really, aiming to build genuine connections or, foster growth within a community.
Okay, so we keep using this term worldview. Let's nail that down. What exactly are we talking about?
Yeah, good question. Simply put, a worldview is the fundamental set of beliefs and assumptions. It shapes how a group or even an individual interprets the world and interacts within it.
So it's the framework.
It's the underlying framework, yeah. It influences their culture, drives their behavior, and it's crucial to remember the sources really stress this culture isn't genetic. It's not innate.
Right, it's learned.
It's learned through a process called enculturation, just by living in a society, observing, being taught.
And the good news, I suppose, is that means it's not fixed.
Exactly. These learned behaviors, the culture itself, they aren't static. They can and do evolve.
Okay, so it's like the unspoken rules, the ingrained assumptions guiding actions and perspectives. Now, the material we're looking at talks a lot about the risk of cultural imposition. What's that about?
This is a really vital point. The material flags a common issue. When beliefs are shared, they can unintentionally come across as being packaged in a specific cultural wrapper, often seen as Western.
Ah, okay. So people might think accepting the belief means they have to become Western.
Precisely. And that leads to this false idea that you have to adopt a whole new culture to embrace a new belief, which is, well, a real disservice, as our sources rightly point out.
So what's the alternative?
We need to be students, keen students of different worldviews. Just think about the potential differences in perspective between, say, a tribal community and someone raised Hindu or Muslim or Buddhist or Sikh.
The fundamental ways they see the world can be miles apart.
Hugely diverse. It's not one size fits all.
It's like trying to use a screwdriver when you need a hammer, right? You might have something valuable, but if the presentation doesn't fit their way of understanding.
It just won't connect. Exactly. Which actually brings us to a powerful example in the material, a case study from South Asia.
Oh yeah, tell us about that one. It sounded quite revealing.
It really was. This was back in 1999. The account describes profiling interviews with this unique, idol-less Hindu group. Some had backgrounds in animism.
Okay, interesting mix.
Very. And their place of worship, their house of the Lord, was incredibly simple. Thatch and bamboo structure, dirt floor, a drum, and the Bhagavad Gita.
Right, a very different picture than maybe a typical church or temple image.
Indeed. Now, contrast that. Nearby, a new church building had gone up. Wooden walls, proper benches, a pulpit, an electronic keyboard, songbooks, Bibles.
Quite the difference.
Striking. And the people who had maybe worshipped sitting on the floor using traditional music were now being asked to sit on benches, sing along to this keyboard.
That's a huge shift in practice. Not just belief, but the whole experience.
It was. And what happened next really underscores the cultural disconnect. The cross-cultural worker started facing opposition. Stones were thrown onto the church's metal roof.
Wow. Why?
Well, the author and the local evangelist realized The worker hadn't really adequately considered the existing culture, the community's worldview.
It raises some big questions, doesn't it?
Huge questions, like, is sitting on benches somehow required for worship? What message does that drastically different building send? Is a keyboard inherently better or more spiritual than local instruments?
Exactly. Was the core message getting lost in all these, well, cultural trappings?
That's the danger. The key takeaway here, as the material really stresses, is bring the message, not a whole new culture.
Otherwise, you risk being seen as, what does the source say? Cultural invaders.
That's the term used, yes. If you're insensitive, the goal should be finding bridges, points of connection.
To communicate effectively.
Yes, and ultimately to help plant contextualized indigenous communities. Communities that feel authentic to them.
The question the material poses is really good, too, about worship on the floor.
Yeah, wouldn't worship sitting on the floor, using local music styles, maybe dramas based on scripture, wouldn't that have been more appropriate, more contextualized in that specific situation?
It forces you to separate the essential from just, well, cultural preference, our preference, maybe.
Absolutely. Now, the material moves on from this example to give us a more systematic approach, a way to think about these worldviews. It outlines 7 key factors.
Okay, let's get into those. Where do we start?
First up, religious beliefs. This is often foundational, For many societies, religion provides the primary framework for interpreting reality. It's the bedrock.
So there are basic assumptions about life, God, creation, all that.
Exactly. Creation, humankind, sin or wrongdoing, salvation or liberation, the afterlife, deities, sacred sites, rituals, leaders, sacred texts. Also, their attitudes towards other belief systems.
So it's not enough just to know someone's label, like Buddhist.
Definitely not. You need the specifics within their tradition. How do they view the divine? What are its characteristics? What about life and death, good and evil? Where does religious authority come from?
Got it. Deep stuff. What's the second factor?
Second is cognitive processes. This is fascinating. It explores how people actually process information, how they determine truth.
How they think.
Essentially, yes. The material breaks it down roughly into 3 ways. Conceptual or logical, does it make sense? Intuitional or emotional, how does it feel? And relational, who is the source? Do I trust them?
And the key is that different cultures prioritize these differently.
That's the really significant point. In some cultures, a logical argument might be king. In others, it's the personal connection, the speaker standing, or the emotional resonance that carries the most weight.
Which means you really have to tailor how you present information.
You absolutely do. Okay, factor number 3, linguistic forms.
Language?
But it's more than just speaking the same words. It's about how language itself is used to convey truth, to integrate members, to build community. The idea of the heart language is critical here.
The language they grew up with. Their mother tongue.
Yes, the language of home, the language with the deepest emotional connection. Communicating in, say, a trade language might be convenient, but it often lacks that resonance, that credibility.
Yeah, the material made a strong point there. Until a message hits someone in their heart language, has it really landed?
That's the question. And it brings up other things too, like, are scriptures available in that language? Written? Oral? What are the literacy rates? Are there special religious terms that need careful handling?
Makes sense. What's number 4?
Number 4 is behavioral patterns. This is about the observable stuff, customs, traditions, habits, actions, the whole lifestyle.
What people actually do.
Exactly. Because, as the material points out, what people do often reveals their core values more accurately than what they say they believe.
So observing things like birth rituals, death rituals, celebrations.
Clothing, food, healthcare choices, how they handle disputes, marriage customs, recreation, shelter, worship styles, all of it.
And trying to understand the why behind it. What does their response to sickness tell you about their worldview, for example?
Precisely. Even music and art forms offer clues. Okay, 5th factor, social structures.
How a society is organized?
Yes. Relationships within the family, the extended family, the community. How do they relate to authority figures? Understanding these dynamics is crucial.
Why crucial?
Because it affects how communication flows, who you need to talk to, the importance of maybe having a sponsor or a trusted go-between when you're new to that structure.
Right. So this covers things like marriage patterns, monogamy, polygamy, who's head of the household, how decisions get made.
Kinship lines, expectations for getting permission for things, resolving conflicts, how community standing is decided, caste, maybe, or wealth, or something else. How they view
A
outsiders.
lot to consider there. Okay, number 6.
Sixth is media influences. How does information get shared? What technologies do they use?
TV, radio, internet.
Could be. But also, the material points out that the medium itself can shape the message. And crucially, are the methods reproducible locally? Can the community adopt and use them?
So it's not just what media is available, but also literacy levels, oral traditions.
Exactly. Storytelling traditions, average education, who owns radios or TVs or even computers and how they're used. What languages do they speak and read?
Okay, one more factor, number 7.
Number 7, motivational resources. This digs into their values. How did they decide what's right and wrong? How did they make important choices?
What drives them?
In essence, yes. The material notes that decision-making processes can vary a lot between cultures. Who holds the purse strings? Who makes decisions in the family? In the community?
Is there freedom to change religion individually or as a family? How are disputes handled? Who's the real authority, government, or someone else?
All those questions. The relationship between religion and politics, peer pressure. It's about understanding the drivers behind their choices.
Wow, okay. Those 7 factors cover a huge amount of ground.
They do. And the material wraps up by emphasizing something important. This profiling, it's never really finished.
It's ongoing.
It's an ongoing journey. Every encounter, every observation should refine and deepen your understanding.
And the goal of all this understanding.
Well, the sources state it clearly. Ultimately, it's about praying more intelligently, communicating more effectively, and, where appropriate, helping to foster multiplying indigenous communities that are truly rooted in their context.
So bringing it all together, understanding worldview isn't just, interesting anthropology. It's absolutely fundamental for any kind of meaningful communication or engagement.
It really is. It demands we move beyond our own assumptions, our own cultural baggage, and really try to see the world through their eyes. Understand those deeper layers of culture and belief.
Which leads us to a final thought maybe for you listening.
Yeah, a question to ponder. How might really grasping these 7 factors of worldview change the way you approach communication? The way you try to understand people and your own diverse interactions?
Whether that's across the globe or, frankly, right in your own neighborhood or workplace.
It's about stepping outside your own frame of reference, isn't it?
Yeah.
Genuinely trying to understand.
It's a continuous process, that's for sure. Learning, discovery, but one that can lead to much richer, much more meaningful connections. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today.